Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is Comedic Pedro, 1975. Now you see, I'm wearing this Cleveland Cavaliers T-shirt. I turned 15 in 1975, and I was still a big Cleveland sports fan. It was actually my whole life, really. And my third team after the Indians and Browns was the Cavs, the NBA team. In 75, they'd only been around for 5 years. They were a relatively young franchise. And that season, the 75-76 Cavs, I'd say is my favorite season all time because the so-called Miracle at Richfield season. And this T-shirt I'm wearing was commemorating the 40th anniversary of that year. In fact, when the Cavs won their championship in 2016, it was the 40th anniversary. Of course, the season started in 75. Yeah, it was very exciting. Yeah, early on, the Cavs played at the Cleveland Arena on the east side, and I think we went to at least one game. I have a vague memory seeing Lenny Wilkens play. And then Nick Milletti, the owner, moved the team to Richfield, Ohio. He built this so-called, they call it the Coliseum. Now, Milletti was Italian, so he gave it that name of that famous building in Rome. And anyway, the 75-76 season, the Cavs made the playoffs, and they had this. And back then, there was one less round, so they won this exciting 7-game series against the Washington Bullets, later renamed the Washington Wizards, which put them in the East Finals. It was very exciting, and yeah, they set NBA attendance records. Yeah, Nate Thurmond was the veteran center they picked up, did real well, and they had a lot of guys. Jim Jones was a center. Austin Carr, who's they call Mr. Cavalier, who's still a longtime Cavs broadcaster, TV broadcaster, and Footsie Walker. A lot of guys. Let's see, Jimmy Clemens, Bingo Smith, outside shooter, Dick Snyder, whom my friend Brent Lestime's father called Duke Snyder because of the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball player. Yeah, so it was exciting. That was an exciting team, and those games were very close. I listened to them on the radio. Not many games were on TV. Or laying in bed listening to the games on the radio, and they had exciting. I think Jimmy Clemens caught a air ball and put it in for win one of the games, and Dick Snyder put in a banking shot. So I always wanted, the Coliseum's been torn down. I always wanted to go back to that area, which is, I guess it was rubble. I don't know if it's farmland yet or if it's just this field of rubble. Yeah, and walk around to pay my respects to that team. Over the years, of course, the 2016 finals, it's wonderful they won that championship, the only one. But as a Cavs fan, I have, it's really it's not just one year and the rest you don't care about, all the years, all the guys who played. And back in the late 80s, they were a contender again. Late 80s with guys like Mark Price, my favorite player, Brad Daugherty, Hot Rod Williams, Steve Kerr, and Larry Nance Sr., whose son is now playing for Cleveland. That's pretty cool. And they made it to the NBA East Finals again, '92, and we were visiting. In fact, we saw the Cavs beat the Celtics on TV at the Coliseum with Larry Bird's last game. We beat the Celtics in the playoffs and played the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan in a tough 6-game series. And I remember watching some of those games at home. My wife Alice, we were there on our first visit together, and she was pregnant with our son Tim. And we flew back to Manila, I think. Yeah, we were flying on the plane when the Cavs lost Game 6. They lost the series 4-2. Yeah, and so they had back in the different... And then back in the 90s, I was overseas. They had these, not a great team, but guys like Bob Sura. And we were going to games when we'd visit Chris Mim. We had a bobblehead doll. I mentioned it in the Lakeside video. And, of course, the LeBron era, LeBron James, the two eras... of course, I was in the Philippines, but I was back for 2016. So all the guys over the years. It was fun. It's been fun being a Cavs fan over the years. Even it was tough losing LeBron both times, but still, you're a fan. As far as I'm concerned, I'm more as much as anyone want the teams to win championships, but it has to be more than that. You just support the team, win or lose, and love the guys and. Because what they're doing is tough, a lot of pressure. Of course, nowadays they're paid very well. So the Cavaliers, yeah. Now, on the cover of today's video is from the picture from the Bob Newhart Show, TV show, which aired from 1972 to 78. Yeah, I think it was back-to-back after the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And on this show, the Bob Newhart played this psychologist, Bob Hartley. And his wife, Emily, was played by Suzanne Plachette. His neighbor, airplane pilot Howard Borden, played by Bill Daly. And then at his work, he had an office where he saw patients. Jerry Robinson, who was this dentist, played by Peter Benners, and then Carol Kester, his receptionist, played by Marcia Wallace. Now, the thing about the Bob Newhart Show, he's a comedian, but really the opposite of Robin Williams, who's high energy, talks real fast. Bob Newhart was just a master at pauses and being kind of awkward. Now, in the show, he was this good guy. He was a good guy, but he dealt with a lot of quirky people, like his neighbor and his colleague at work, and then the receptionist, and of course, his patients. And the thing is that I remember about the show is, people would say something kind of unusual or ridiculous, and then he would say, well, that's that's something. He would sort of stutter a little bit and have these pauses, and he was kind of awkward, but and that was so funny. And he was a good guy. I think that's what made the show. He was this good guy, well-intentioned and doing his best, and a good guy, and dealing with people. And people are funny, and the way. And then again, I've never seen a guy be able to be funny with just by pausing. He would have these, did it all the time. It's kind of awkward, but a good guy. So that was a wonderful TV show, the Bob Newhart Show. Now in world events and in national events, on January 6th, the Wheel of Fortune debuted on NBC TV. Remember that? What's the name of the gal? Hannah White, who would take the people trying to guess these words, and then she'd spin the thing or pull the things down, pull the letters off, or find out what the letters are. Okay, March 4th, Charlie Chaplin was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. How about that? He was British, became famous in the U.S. as a movie star. On March 9th, the construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline began. Yeah, and my friend Rick Donaldson, his father, Richard Donaldson, was heavily involved in that as a lawyer for Standard Oil. They were, it was not an easy thing. It was actually, they say, I was talking to him about it. He said it was a tougher construction project than the Panama Canal, because they're in the far north, in the Arctic, and they're building building this pipeline over permafrost, and that was really, he flew so that was a big deal, and they discovered all this oil up there, and so bringing it down for use by Americans and others around the world. The Rocky Horror Picture Show opened on Broadway on March 10th. That would be the live acting. On the 25th of March, King Faisal of Saudi Arabia was shot and killed by his nephew. Tragic. In Saudi Arabia, it's the country's named after the Saud family and the royal family. They rule the country, no democracy, and so this was some family trouble for sure. April 9th, the Philippine Basketball Association, Asia's first pro basketball league, opened they started playing games at the Araneta Coliseum in Manila, Philippines. So that was really fun. They're still around, the PBA. Yeah. I never went to a game. I was there. I never went to a game. I was kind of intimidated, but I was aware. I supported Alaska Milk, the Milkmen, and of course San Miguel Bears, one of the most popular teams, and Ginebra. April 18th, the Khmer Rouge, the new government in Cambodia, started a mass evacuation of the capital of Phnom Penh, and this led to the genocide, the so-called Killing Fields, where 25% or 2 million people were murdered by the government. Horrific. And this was a communist government, communist takeover, and they decided they had some crazy ideas. They thought, all these rich people in the city and the educated people and anyone who had an education was considered a criminal, and this definitely was not funny. But one of the most unbelievable things in history that a government This was just back in the 70s, from 75 to 79. They murdered 25% of the people, 2 million people. And they started by taking everybody out of the city. Anybody who was a doctor or a lawyer or anybody who had a good job, or even people who wore glasses, they decided they were enemies of the country. Horrible. On the 30th of April, Saigon, South Vietnam fell to North Vietnam. So this was the end of the Vietnam War, which the U.S. Lost, and the South Vietnam lost. North Vietnam took over the country. A very sad day in American history. And yeah, but for the guys in the Vietnam vets, this was such a depressing thing, because everything they'd fought for was over, and that they were unable to preserve democracy in South Vietnam. And but the Cold War was won, because eventually the Soviet Union fell, and so those guys who fought in the Vietnam War should feel I think they should look at it that way, and their efforts are not in vain, because they were brave men, and they were just it was a very tough situation, very tough war to win. On June 20th, the movie Jaws was released. It was a summer hit. Movie Jaws. I remember my cousin Mike said he was afraid to sit on the toilet. He was afraid because this movie really promoted the fear of sharks, and shark attacks. Especially if you're in the ocean. The movie Jaws. On the 25th of June, Mozambique in southern Africa became independent of Portugal. On July 5th, Cape Verde, which is a small archipelago off the west coast of Africa, became independent also of Portugal. And Sao Tome e Principe, another island country near Africa, became again independent of Portugal. We had a player in Cleveland, NBA player on the Cavs from Sao Tome e Principe. On the 30th of July, in Detroit, the Teamster president, Jimmy Hoffa, was reported missing, and they never found out what happened to him. Jimmy Hoffa, probably somebody killed him. He was, who knows? But he had, the Teamsters union. There were some issues with that organization. On the 3rd of August, the Louisiana Superdome opened in New Orleans, kind of like the Astrodome. A domed stadium for baseball and football, and so the elements, if it rained or it was cold, it wouldn't, they could make it room temperature, pleasant conditions, and dry. On the 5th of August, Gerald Ford restored the U.S. citizenship of Robert E. Lee. Wow. Just imagine that Robert E. Lee was the top general in the Confederate Army in the U.S. Civil War, and he must have been stripped of his citizenship. Of course, he was part of this rebellion and leaving the United States. I wonder what it's funny, in recent days or years, they've been these people have targeting people like Robert E. Lee as symbols of so-called white supremacy, and you wonder if they want to have him stripped of his citizenship again. I hope not, because this poor guy's died so long ago. On the 25th of August, Bruce Springsteen released an album, Born to Run, which became very popular. September 9th, Riverfront Stadium opened in Cincinnati, where the Cincinnati Reds played. I think the Bengals on the Ohio River. That's the riverfront. On the 16th of September, Papua New Guinea became independent of Australia, the eastern half of the island of New Guinea. On the 18th of September, Patty Hearst, was captured in San Francisco. She had been, that was some saga, she was the daughter of a wealthy, Hearst, in the Hearst family, and she'd been kidnapped, but then eventually was enthusiastically going along with the Symbionese Liberation Army, and they were robbing banks, and so this was, and then of course she was arrested, and she had had a long ordeal with this group, and now, and I guess she had really in her mind she sort of adopted their way of thinking, but then later she thought, no, this is wrong, and then it was a tough thing she went through, and the public was too hard on her. On October 1st, the Thrilla in Manila, Muhammad Ali defeated Joe Frazier in a heavyweight boxing title fight at Araneta Coliseum in Manila, in Cubao. Now they have Ali Mall, shopping mall there nearby. And my wife, my dear wife, Alice Garcia Ray, her father, Emiliano Garcia Sr., was at the fight. Just imagine. And they're not doing that anymore. All the fights now seem to be in Las Vegas, although back then that was really something. On October 11th, Saturday Night Live debuted on NBC TV, and I believe that show is still going. And the famous guys were John Belushi and who are the other guys? Can't think of their names right now. John Belushi and anyway. On the 22nd of October, the Cincinnati Reds defeated the Boston Red Sox in the MLB World Series and went up to Game 7. Game 6, of course, Carlton Fisk hit the home run to keep the Red Sox alive, to fight for another day. On the 31st of October, Queen, the rock band Queen, released Bohemian Rhapsody, which became a very popular song. November 11th, Angola, another African country, became independent of Portugal. Yeah. On the 16th of November, the Third Cod War started between the Great Britain and Iceland. Yeah, not a really big deal, but they were fighting over fishing territory, and apparently there were some acts of violence, although I'm not sure if anybody got killed, but I think they were cutting each other's fishing nets and doing some things. Well, never heard of that before. The Third Cod War, fighting over fishing rights in the Atlantic Ocean. On the 25th of November, Suriname became independent of the Netherlands in South America, formerly known as Dutch Guyana. On the 26th of November, the Rocky Horror Picture Show movie was released. That became very popular. I went once. There are people who would go to that every Saturday night, and they'd get dressed up as a character, and they'd be dancing, get up and mimic these movements of the actors in the movie. Now, an unknown date for 1975, Peter Gabriel left the rock band Genesis and was replaced by Phil Collins. Now, in my family, my father, John S. Ray, turned 51. He was 51 years old in 1975, and my mother also. She also turned 51. My older brother, Mark, turned 23, and he was in his last year at Oberlin College. He was on the 5-year plan. He getting his English degree, very interested in religion and spirituality. Our sister Pamela, she had died. She was still in heaven. She'd been there for 4 years, died April 11th, 71, age 16 and 10 months, so not much we can... You don't know. That's the mystery of death when people die, and we were still very much missing her at that time. And but what are you going to do? This is a reality of life, that death. People die and they're gone. What are you going to do? And I think it really helps us. It's all helpful spiritually to seek God because that's God's the only thing that we're not going to lose, and we need to strengthen that relationship with Divine Mother, whom the name I like to call God. Now, my sister Patricia, she turned 18 in November. She was in her last year of high school, or at least started in the fall. No, she actually finished in the first 6 months in grade 11, and in the fall started her senior year of high school. Yeah, she was really into music. She played 2 instruments, the viola and the piano, and she very good student. Top student, and she was also into French language. Yeah, so Patricia, and now I turned 15 in May. I was also in the high school, grade 9 the first half of the year, and then grade 10 in the fall. And like I said, I was really into Cleveland sports and Boy Scouts, and I had friends. We would play baseball in the park, and football and basketball, and I was still playing Little League, or I think they call it Suburban League baseball. And I was a good student, and over 75, the Cleveland Indians signed Frank Robinson. That was a big deal. He was the first black manager in MLB, in pro baseball, Major League Baseball, and the Indians wore red uniforms. I was really jealous of my friend Rick Donaldson, because he was at opening day when Frank Robinson was the player manager and played that game, hit a home run in the first inning, his first at bat. Really amazing. Now, my parents were busy during these years from 74 to 76 with the Peter Beebe Episcopal Church Court a women priest case, the case that my father was involved in, working as the lawyer for the defendant, Peter Beebe. They allowed women to go to seminary in the Episcopal Church and graduate, but then they could not become ministers. So he had some women, this Peter Beebe at Oberlin, Ohio. He helped these women, he had them serve communion with him. He got in trouble, and then there was a legal case, and my father was the lawyer, and my parents found out about it, and they won, I think in 76. And after that, women could be priests in the Episcopal Church. And this was a big deal. And, my parents did it in large degree because our sister Pamela had died, and if she had wanted, she would have been a wonderful, church leader, but under the rules, she would not have been allowed. So they kind of did it for her, and of course, all women have that. Women tend to be very nurturing and can be very kind, so they can do a good job as a leader of a church. So that's a story of 1975. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you so much for watching. You might consider checking out our website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. Again, thanks for watching. God bless you. Take care. And I'll see you next time.